Story 1. I have shared this story before, but my mom used to teach at a preschool. One day, as Christmas was approaching, one of her coworkers told her through tears that she had no money to buy gifts for her children and was devastated that they wouldn't have a Christmas. My mom took me to the mall, and I helped her pick out several toys for her coworkers' kids, not just small items. The only thing I can still remember specifically is that we bought a collection of Lego sets. My mom spared no expense. We got them home, and she wrapped them all, saying they were from Santa. Then, on Christmas Eve, she went to their house, dropped them off at the front door, and left before her coworker could see who it was. She told me she didn't want her coworker to know it was her, so that she wouldn't feel indebted. After Christmas, her coworker told her, again through tears, that someone had dropped off a bunch of gifts and saved their Christmas, but she didn't know who. My mom never revealed her identity, and I'm not sure she even told my dad. It was our little secret. I can't tell this story without crying. Story 2. About 10 years ago, I was leaving Walmart around Halloween when I spotted a man with around 60 backpacks in his cart. I asked him what they were for, and he shared that he is now a college professor. He was raised in a very poor rural community in Africa, and every year, he sends all of these backpacks back to his home country to support young students in achieving their dreams of getting an education. Story 3. I worked at a shoe store when a man walked in with his son. The man spoke no English, so his son had to translate. The son was in high school, and his father wanted shoes for a job interview. I initially thought the son was making the request, but the father corrected me. The son spoke a lot, which helped me understand the situation. The father was proud but financially struggling. It turned out the father was interviewing for a janitor position at his son's high school. I offered a significant discount of 70%. The father was unaware of the discount's magnitude. The son thanked me sincerely. The next day, I had a discussion with loss prevention and lost my job. That family would never know, but I believe in supporting proud individuals who deserve to interview in decent shoes. Story 4. During the 2008 recession, we were struggling financially. My parents were undocumented, so we couldn't even get assistance. My mom was upset because she couldn't afford groceries, and we often had rice and beans with tortillas. My brother, who was 14 at the time, sold his PlayStation 2 and all of his games to buy a Wii. I clearly remember him taking his wad of cash out and giving it to my mom. After we left Walmart, he made sure we all got ice cream. He has never mentioned it since, and whenever I tried to thank him, he acts like he doesn't remember. Story 5. Just yesterday, my girlfriend and I were at the grocery store when a woman said, "Excuse me," behind us. I thought she just needed to get by, but she approached us and said, "This is for you," while holding a $50 gift card for our trip. She explained that it was the anniversary of her father-in-law's death a few years ago, and he liked to help people, so she was carrying it forward. There was no social media involved, just a nice woman who wanted to help. It covered a good portion of our bill, which we definitely needed. We're always looking for deals to keep our expenses down as much as possible. Truly one of the nicest things I've ever experienced, and I hope to return the favor one day. You never know how impactful that can be. Story 6. I paid someone's electricity bill. It was the middle of winter, and I was at work in a grocery store's tobacco shop where people could also pay their bills. He was an elderly man and a regular customer. He was always very kind, but we all knew he wasn't really well off, as too many elderly people unfortunately are. He came up to me wanting to pay 2 bills. He asked if he could pay one bill first, which I think was for water, and then the other one for electricity separately, to see if he would have enough money left after buying some groceries. He paid for the first bill, and I saw his face fall when he realized he would not have enough money left for the second one. So I offered to pay it. He was so grateful he almost cried and told me he would pay me back the next month. The next month rolls around, and there he is with the money to pay me back. I simply told him to keep the money and spend it on groceries or bills, whatever he needed it for. He actually started crying this time and gave me a big hug while thanking me repeatedly. It really warmed my heart to see that kind of weight lifted off someone's shoulders. Story 7. I was at one of our 2 tabletop game stores picking up a box of models while listening to a man and his 2 boys talking about where to start the hobby. The boys planned to pool their money to buy the basic starter box and one box of models each to begin. I completed my purchase and bought it for them, asking the cashier, with whom I was familiar, to help them spend their cash on useful starter items. I returned a few weeks later, and the owner had a card from them thanking me for helping their Warhammer journey get started. That card and envelope still hang next to my hobby station 3 years later. Story 8. The lady in front of me was using Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits. She did not have enough and was trying to decide whether to put back milk, butter, flour, rice, and eggs, or chicken and a bag of something else, possibly beans. The man ahead of me pulled out a $20 bill and gave it to the cashier. "Give her the change," he told the cashier. Then he said to the lady, "Get your kids something from the gum machine on your way out." I was moved to tears. Story 9. I like to be that person sometimes. I work at a veterinary clinic and I see people at their lowest when they have to put a pet down. Sometimes unexpected situations arise, and these people don't always have the money to euthanize their pet or retrieve their ashes. A few times, I have paid for the pet's ashes myself. I simply say a good Samaritan covered the cost. I do it quietly and don't make a big deal about it. Seeing the relief on a person's face when they are already so upset is worth it. I have all my pet's ashes and it means the world to me, so I empathize. Story 10. When I was a child and my father lost his job, he took my television in for repair to see how much it would cost. The television repairman fixed it for free, knowing that my dad was out of work. That meant a lot to me. I still think of that man. My father offered to pay him, but the gentleman said there was no need. He didn't have to do that, but he did. My television was as good as new. In fact, it's still at my parents' old house and still works because I had an old video game system hooked up to it. Story 11. There is a German film director who is not very well known internationally. He has a reputation for being an enfant terrible because he frequently makes provocative statements to the public, treating it like a theatrical performance. One day, I made a significant mistake on his set during the first day, and after shooting ended, he approached me. Since we were a small crew, it was not unusual for the director to know everyone. I was certain he would fire me. Instead, he gave a speech about how he didn't want me to dwell on a small mistake, emphasizing that everyone makes errors and that they do not define me as a worker. He also mentioned that if people were to remember all the mistakes he made, he wouldn't be in his position. I have worked with him multiple times since then, and he is genuinely one of the most sincere people I have ever met. After filming wrapped up, he treated the entire crew but always insists that people should not discuss these positive gestures in public, as he has a certain public image that he does not want to change. Story 12. My dad does a lot of things like this. When I was younger and told him that I would give my friend my lunches at school because she couldn't afford lunch, he would send me to school with 2 lunches. When one of my friend's families needed financial help but didn't want to accept anything from anyone, he sent them a check under the guise of winning a contest. When the man in front of us at the pharmacy couldn't pay for his $200 prescription, he paid for it when the man walked out. He wakes up early every morning to cook the dog's breakfast, and when I was younger, he would wake up early every morning to make lunch and breakfast for my siblings and me. When I had heart surgery, he did his best to help me. I love him so much, and he's always doing things for others. Story 13. On a long bike ride, I saw a cyclist give another cyclist some of their water when there was nowhere nearby to refill. Story 14. My neighbor used to leave bags of groceries at the door of an elderly woman in our building. There were no notes or knocking, and he would disappear before anyone saw him. She never knew who it was. Story 15. Back in 2015, during Christmas time, a young couple with a baby and a small child broke down in their recreational vehicle near our house. I informed my husband about their situation, and we realized they didn't have much. He returned home with 4 bags of groceries, some toys, and other necessities for the kids. He brought these items to the couple in their vehicle. He was always doing things like this without seeking recognition. He had the best heart of anyone I have ever known. He passed away last year, and I aspire to be the same kind of person he was for others. I am actively helping a family we both knew who were struggling whenever I can, trying to pay it forward. Story 16. A long time ago in San Francisco, a group of us were there, though I can't remember the reason. There was a homeless woman, probably in her 50s or 60s, who clearly had mental health issues. My friend held her while she cried. I still remember that moment and feel honored to be his friend. Story 17. Honestly, donating to various charities without publicizing it and giving cash or food to the homeless on the street without posting about it is what truly matters. Story 18. I quickly put my credit card in to pay for a back-to-school shopping trip for a grandmother who was suddenly taking care of 3 children after her daughter went to jail. She was talking and fretting to herself out loud as everything was rung up, getting more and more nervous. The kids needed supplies and basic clothes. It was hundreds of dollars, but I brushed it off by saying, I had a really good week at work, and I have extra cash. It's what I always tell people when I pay for their things so they aren't embarrassed. Some thank me, some don't, probably because they are too shy. It doesn't matter to me. I am just meeting a need that I can. My family is big on helping individuals and charitable organizations, but helping individuals is always more fun. Story 19. I was at a local record store shortly before Christmas one year when a woman said she wanted to buy Green Day's American Idiot on vinyl for her daughter, but she had no money. She had a bunch of severely broken records she offered as payment, but the owner couldn't accept them. However, he offered to go back to his office to grab a box for her to carry them in, as it was quite cold. While doing this, he slipped the American Idiot record in, covering it so she wouldn't see it. After making my purchase, I went to my car and saw this woman crying tears of joy. It was a beautiful sight. Story 20. It was Christmas in 1987. I was 5, my brother was 6, and my sister was 2. Our family had recently relocated to a different state 1,300 miles away. My mom was homesick and wanted to see her family. My parents had very little money and an old car but decided to make the trip. We got about 700 miles into the journey when I came down with the flu, developed a fever, and began vomiting. It was miserable for everyone, and then the car broke down during a blizzard. So there we were, 3 kids and mom and dad on the side of the interstate in a massive blizzard on Christmas Eve in an unfamiliar place. Eventually, while we were walking along the highway, a car stopped to check on us. It was an elderly couple. They took us to their home, fed us, and made sure we were all comfortable. In the morning, they made us breakfast, and the old man told my dad that he had a car they no longer used and would sell it to him for $100 to be paid later. He signed the title over to my dad and told him to mail a check whenever he could. Those people were saints. Plot twist. When we all got loaded up in the new car, my mom told my dad to take me home, meaning the state we were headed to. My dad assumed she meant our new home. She fell asleep and woke up hours later to discover we were headed the wrong way. A massive argument ensued. They still debate it to this day. Story 21. When I was still in my mother's womb, she was trying to find work as an immigrant in America, and my dad was between jobs, so we couldn't even afford electricity or gas to heat the house. A family friend brought us a bunch of firewood so we wouldn't freeze to death. I ended up becoming best friends with his grandson, and I saw him often. He was one of the most decent men I ever knew, and he always treated me like family. After he passed, my mom told me how he saved us from freezing. I wasn't surprised, he was just that kind of guy. He never asked for anything in return. Life had been good to him, and he always made sure to take care of people. Rest in peace, Richard. You were the best grandpa ever, even though you weren't really my grandpa. Story 22. One Easter, I went to get the cracked egg so my mom wouldn't have to, and she had already gotten it so that I could have the good egg. Moms do a million things like that, and no one notices. Story 23. I used to work in an inpatient psychiatric unit in Los Angeles. Towards the end of one of the shifts, a disheveled homeless patient was being discharged without any shoes. One of my coworkers took off their own shoes and gave them to this patient. It was a truly touching gesture that I will never forget. Story 24. My husband and son both had a severe stomach bug last weekend. I went to see if we had any Zofran for their nausea. We had one left. He told me to save it in case my son needed it. Story 25. George Michael may not be the most selfless individual, but he donated to many charities without feeling the need to brag about it, unlike most celebrities. Following Michael's death, various charities revealed that he had privately supported them for many years. These charities included Childline, to whom he had donated millions, the Terrence Higgins Trust, and Macmillan Cancer Support. Michael also donated to individuals. He reportedly called the production team of the quiz show Deal or No Deal after a contestant revealed that she needed £15,000 to fund in vitro fertilization treatment and anonymously paid for it. He once tipped a student nurse working as a barmaid £5,000 because she was in debt. On January 3, 2017, another woman came forward and, with the permission of Michael's family, revealed that he had anonymously paid for her in vitro fertilization treatment after seeing her discuss her conceiving difficulties on an episode of This Morning in 2010. The woman gave birth to a girl in 2012. After his death, it was also revealed that Michael had been anonymously paying for an annual Christmas tree erected in Highgate, as well as funding the Christmas lights for the previous decade. He was also the largest supporter of Highgate's annual fair in the square during those 10 years, donating anonymously as a local resident. Story 26. I was helping with a coat drive in the winter. People were bringing in old coats, blankets, and boots. One lady came in and dropped off several garbage bags and then disappeared. We sorted through the donations before placing them in the appropriate boxes. When we opened the garbage bags from the lady, each one was filled with brand new jackets, boots, mittens, and hats. Most items were for children, but there were also adult jackets in one of the bags. She donated several $100s worth of items for complete strangers. Story 27. My great-aunt was receiving treatment for cancer and was very weak. Family members took turns staying with her, and everyone struggled with how difficult it was for her to move safely around the house, especially in the bathroom. I don't remember all the details anymore, but I do know that one day, when the family member on duty took her for chemotherapy, an hour in the car each way and then hours sitting in the chair, their neighbor entered the house and made it safer. I remember he installed grab bars in the bathroom and removed the carpet runner in the hall. I feel like he also repaired the front stairs, but I might be confusing memories. My great-aunt was friendly with the neighbor's wife, who was visiting and bringing meals. She knew from those visits about the safety issues my aunt faced and informed her husband. Since they had spare keys for each other, the neighbor was able to enter the house on a treatment day. He didn't want people to know, but it wasn't hard to figure out. I'm overwhelmed thinking about what a good heart he had. My aunt was fortunate to have such caring neighbors in her life. Story 28. My mom used to take a refugee family grocery shopping weekly. I'm glad she set that kind of example. Story 29. A former employer of mine discovered that an employee had made a serious mistake. Instead of firing him, he wrote a positive character reference, gave him $100 to cover a fine, and told him not to repay it. Story 30. In the 1990s, my wife and I were struggling financially, and our children were young. One late evening, we heard something at the letterbox. I was upstairs, so I looked out of the window and saw someone running up the road. It resembled a friend, but I wasn't certain. Inside was an envelope containing £500. I still don't know who left it, but I have a suspicion. Regardless, it was a kind gesture, given without any expectation of thanks. People can be wonderful sometimes. Story 31. When my brother was in his early 20s, he worked as a courier for an escrow company. He was earning decent money but was still living with our parents. At one point, our dad wanted to review his finances because he knew my brother wanted to move out but apparently couldn't budget for it. This surprised my dad since my brother was very frugal and never seemed to spend money on anything non-essential. My dad examined his accounts and started asking him about these seemingly random but frequent expenses. It turned out that whenever my brother saw any unhoused individuals while driving for work, he would return on his lunch break, chat with them, and buy them whatever they needed most: shoes, jackets, tents, food, interview clothes, or haircuts. He lived his whole life selflessly, giving away whatever he had: money, energy, time, wisdom, and was, in my opinion, the most decent human being alive. He passed away in 2017 from brain cancer, and I miss him deeply. Story 32. My husband and I were visiting Virginia City, Nevada, and walking in the little town. There were icy mounds on the sidewalk from a previous storm, and we suddenly came upon an elderly man sitting on the ground with blood streaming down his face. My husband immediately approached him and said, "Sir, do you need some help?" The man was slow to respond and replied that he had slipped on some ice while headed home, but he should be okay. My husband pointed out that he was bleeding and asked if there was anyone he could call for him. The man was surprised and said no, it was just him, and accepted my husband's offer to call the paramedics to get him checked out. We stayed with the man until help arrived. While we waited, my husband went into the bar across the street and got some napkins to wipe the blood from his face. My husband has helped random strangers in need several times during the few years I've known him, and I find it very admirable. I am now remembering another time this happened when we first started dating. He was waiting for me outside a liquor store while I browsed for some wine. In the 10 minutes I was inside, he befriended the homeless man who usually sits outside, listening to him share how he had been down on his luck and about his life as a child. As I came out and we prepared to leave, my husband gave the man a hug. I had never seen anything like that before, especially in San Diego, where the homeless are usually ignored. These small gestures he makes for others certainly make me proud to be his wife. Story 33. My husband gave a homeless man $100 and told no one. If I hadn't been with him, I don't think he would have even mentioned it. It was very kind of him. He often gives to the homeless, providing both money and food. Story 34. This is something someone did for me. I lived in an isolated region at the time and got severely sick, experiencing a type of fever where I felt freezing. When loaded into the ambulance, I kept trying to stumble over to get my blanket while they kept herding me back inside and trying to get it through to me that I was running a high fever. No one thought to tell my carer to grab an overnight bag or at least my wallet and shoes. I was taken in the ambulance boat to a mainland hospital, wearing the ragged clothes I had on as pajamas, without shoes, wallet, ID, or phone. I was released after a day or maybe two. I was sitting miserably in the parking lot because they wouldn't let me use the hospital phone, and they didn't care what happened after I was released. I had no idea which direction to head in, no way to contact someone to pick me up, and the knowledge that it was at least 10 kilometers between the ferry terminal and the hospital. I was barefoot through a bad area I didn't know well, and I wasn't dressed in a way that would inspire confidence if I tried hitchhiking, all while still feeling quite sick. I asked a lady in the parking lot if I could borrow her phone to get my carer to make the trip out by ferry and bus to come collect me. Instead, she called a taxi for me and gave me enough money for the long ride to the jetty, plus the ferry fare. I can't remember the exact amount, but it was at least $40. I was so grateful for her kindness. Thank you, random woman at the hospital parking lot. Story 35. I traveled with my family when I was a teenager. I analyzed all the bags and noticed that someone would need to carry the two 80-pound travel bags. You could not wheel a suitcase and carry one of the bags. I carried both throughout the airport and train stations without complaint. Nobody asked me to, and I never asked my brother to share the duties with me, nor did he ever offer to. Story 36. My former boss donates $500 to our local veterinary practice a few times a year to cover expenses for those who are struggling. Story 37. I was outside a shop waiting for my wife. It was Easter, and some individuals were singing and praying. After they finished, a lady started handing out hot cross buns, and I declined one. Then a man began dragging a large wooden cross across the road. When he almost reached the other side, he noticed an elderly lady struggling to get her trolley up the curb. He helped her with both her and the trolley, but while he was doing this, the wooden cross slightly overhung into the road. Someone in a car honked their horn while he was still helping. I thought it must be a joke and that they knew each other, but no, the driver was just rude. I'm sure you'll realize that the events took about 25 minutes, and I didn't complain at all when my wife came out of the shop. Of course, along with the shopping, she also came out with the hot cross bun I had turned down. Story 38. I don't have a story to share. I just want to express that these stories are wonderful, and I enjoy reading such positivity. It's a refreshing break from the negativity found on much of the internet. Story 39. I am a pediatric nurse. I regularly have the honor of witnessing families make the bravest decision of their lives when they choose to give life through organ donation for their child, whose life is ending in a horrific and unfair way. Watching that happen is truly sacred and deeply moving. The next day, I might come in and work with a recipient's family, seeing hope restored for a child. The grief and joy are overwhelming in this life. Story 40. I was walking through Monroeville Mall, with the escalators to my left. When I was a few feet away, my peripheral vision registered several descending passengers. A lone male in his late 70s was the first to exit the elevator. When he reached the bottom, he fell face down. I immediately ran to him, lifted him, and asked if he was okay and if he wanted me to contact emergency services or a family member. He said, "No, it's this damn Parkinson's." Sadly, no other mall customers or employees in the vicinity acknowledged him. It was a truly sad commentary on contemporary society. Story 41. 10 to 12 years ago, a friend had a birthday party and requested that instead of gifts, everyone donate money to buy livestock for a village in Africa. I posted online selling some items to raise money for a plane ticket to visit my girlfriend out of state over the summer. A friend direct messaged me and offered to cover the ticket. After a meeting on campus, we went to get some food. There was a man panhandling. Even though his story was a common tactic in the area, my friend still gave him some money. I later saw the same man with a similar story in a different town. My friend stayed late one evening and helped me work on an engineering project, right up to the point where I blew up a couple of hundred LED bulbs. She was probably the nicest person I have ever met. Story 42. I come from a country where half of the medical system operates for profit. Doctors have been criticized by the general population as money-hungry, but most of the doctors I know, including myself, are willing to waive our consulting fees, provide physician samples of expensive medications, or cover necessary investigations for patients who cannot afford them. Unfortunately, we have limited control over hospital and administrative fees. The population is largely illiterate and fearful of conventional medicine, so we do understand this to some extent. Story 43. Like so many in the greatest generation, my father volunteered to go to Europe for 4 years. He and my mother, of German heritage, had recently married in Chicago. His parents were from northern Italy, and he could speak and understand Italian. I later found out he was in the Office of Strategic Services. He did make it back. Due to a series of government mistakes, he did not receive veteran benefits. His war records seem to have been burned in a fire at the National Archives, possibly in St. Louis. I have seen photos of him and relatives from the war. Story 44. I make quilts. They are expensive to create, but I still give them away to family members who deserve a bit of love. Last month, I finished 3 baby quilts on behalf of my dad, who became a great-grandfather with 3 babies born within 6 weeks of each other. 2 of the recipients were once babies themselves and received my first 2 baby quilts 29 years ago. Story 45. One time, my family and a friend's family were traveling by train when an elderly woman had a seizure on the floor. My dad and my friend's dad helped her, got off the train at the next stop, and called an ambulance. They even went with her to the hospital, which was very kind of them. Story 46. My friend's sister worked with a homeless program in Denver, driving around with supplies of food and warm clothes for those in need. My friend adopted this practice, and now I do it too. I always carry granola bars and bottles of water in my bag to distribute on the subway. Story 47. I blew a tire in the mountains of Colorado and got stuck in a blizzard. I was panicking because I didn't have enough money to stay anywhere, especially with the cost of the tire repairs. By the time the repairs were completed, it wasn't safe to drive anymore. The woman at the discount tire counter gave me a discount and invited my dog and me to stay the night at her house. Story 48. I work at an after-school program in a challenging neighborhood with children aged 6 to 10. I had been in charge of the arts and crafts room for the day, and we made squishy toys. It was a mess, but the kids were happy. However, something came up, and I had to leave the room to take care of it. Normally, this means the kids would escape to avoid cleaning up. Understandable, but frustrating. By the time I returned, I realized that all the kids who had participated in the project had been picked up by their parents. I resigned myself to cleaning up the arts room after more than a dozen kids. As I opened the door, I saw two girls, both age 9, who had just finished cleaning up everything. I stood in surprise. The girls, both recent immigrants, approached me and told me, "You do good things for us. Good things happen to you." If I had come back just 2 minutes later, I would never have known. Story 49. I pay my mother's household bills and buy her groceries regularly, arranging delivery for the items she cannot carry herself. She was abusive while I was growing up, and although I will never forgive, forget, or love her, she has a roof over her head and food to eat. Story 50. There was a girl who had 3 brothers, and her father needed a kidney, so she donated her kidney to him. I think donating organs is the most selfless thing a person can do. Story 51. Someone anonymously donated to a fundraiser for a colleague's medical bills, and no one ever knew who it was. Story 52. A young man dropped out of high school in his senior year to take on 2 jobs to provide for his younger siblings. As his father went to prison and his mother struggled to make ends meet, he developed a strong work ethic and is now very successful. Story 53. My daughter is a high school senior and has a friend whose family struggles financially. This friend wants to attend prom this year, but they cannot afford it. My daughter set up a fundraising campaign that raised $200, obtained a free ticket for her friend from the prom committee, and is currently taking them for a haircut and shopping for prom clothes. Story 54. A person receiving social assistance met with me, their caseworker, and offered to pay for my coffee, even though they were financially struggling. It was the kindest and most selfless gesture I have experienced in my life. Story 55. There is a lady in my neighborhood who bakes. She packages her baked goods and randomly delivers them to elderly homes. I asked her why she does this. She replied that many of the residents are homebound and somewhat isolated. Providing them with baked goods is a way to visit and remind them that they are not forgotten. Story 56. I have never seen someone do something selfless. Most do not advertise it. One chilly day, I bought some food and gave cash to a person sitting outside a Walmart intersection. He was bundled up and cold with a sign at his feet. I usually avoid giving direct money to most beggars due to the issue of panhandling, but I felt compelled to help. I hope he used that money to get somewhere safe and that the meal sustained him for a little while. Story 57. Mine was fairly recent. I was on maternity leave with my first child, a few months post-cesarean section. My mother works with families that are struggling. She mentioned that there was a young woman about 10 to 15 years younger than me who was about to have a planned cesarean section as well, but she was struggling because her partner was abusive. I had been in an abusive relationship before, but I couldn't imagine how hard it would be to be so young with an abusive partner while facing a cesarean section and a new baby. My partner is amazing and helps out so much, so my heart broke at how terrifying that must be. I ended up bringing my mother along to the store, and I bought many items for immediate and future needs. Normally, I have my mother donate any clothes or baby items that my child has outgrown to whichever family needs them. Maybe it was the experience of being a new mother and all the hormones. I doubt it because even 2 years later, I would do it again in a heartbeat. To this day, only my mother knows where it all came from. Story 58. I worked at a major grocery chain. Whenever someone came to the store in a military uniform, I would go to the register, pay for their order, and thank them for their service. I did this as a single mother, but I have never shared it until now. I didn't want any attention. I just wanted to pay it forward. I had been widowed at the age of 36 and had people who helped me. Story 59. A friend told me I did this while sitting at their garage sale. Some unsure teenagers were talking and looking at us. They didn't know English, but I knew Russian, so I learned from them that their host family was not good. My friend helped them find a new one. Story 60. There is an anime titled One Punch Man that follows a character who can defeat monsters with a single punch. He notably defeated a formidable foe called the Deep Sea King in front of many citizens, leading them to doubt the effectiveness of previous heroes. However, He chose not to seek the credit for himself and loudly stated how fortunate he was that the other heroes had weakened the monster, allowing him to defeat it effortlessly. By doing this, he sacrificed his own reputation to protect the other heroes from ridicule, embodying the principle that true heroes prioritize the mission over personal recognition. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.